Hey guys, it's Reese with SCA Construction, and in today's video, I want to go over the different size pipes that you would see in everyday applications for a drainage system, whether it's a single family home, commercial application, or anything in between. And I want to try and explain when you would size up a pipe versus size down and what you might want to be thinking about in the process. And while this is a little bit hard to make a video about because every application is so different, the best thing to do is consult with a professional. But if you're trying to do it yourself and you're looking for more information, here's what you're going to have to do. I want to first point out that this is corrugated. It's a single wall corrugated pipe, which means there's just one layer of PVC. And now these are SDR 35 PVC pipes, or common sewer and drain pipe that you would see on a development where they're stubbing up for sewer. And this is going to be something that's going to be in a long-term application, a commercial application, but we like to use it in residential as well, just because it's a high quality product. It lasts for a long time. If it ever gets clogged, for whatever reason, it's also strong enough to be jetted out without bursting apart. Now, looking at the corrugated pipe, and again, I know a lot of people use this. It's a very cheap product. You can get it almost anywhere. And if you have a common landscaper come out and give you all a price, most of the time, this is what they're going to be bidding. And so make sure to double check what material the contractor is installing before proceeding with any work. But as you can see, it's thin enough to where, just with my thumbs, I can crush the top of the pipe, which is not very good. Now, keep in mind, if you can imagine the scene, when you're installing this kind of pipe, you're gonna dig a trench and then you're going to have to pack it back in. Can you imagine if I can squish this with my hands, how hard it's gonna be? If they've got a mini excavator or something else, even just using hand tools, how easy it would be to crush or crack this pipe when you're installing it. And so we don't like to use that in drainage applications. Sometimes we will use these for French drains if it's a perforated pipe with a sock around it to protect sediment and it's encased in gravel. Sometimes we will do that, but it depends on the application and what the customer is looking for. But we're not gonna focus on that for now. We wanna take a look at the products that we typically use, which are higher quality, higher grade, higher strength kinds of pipe. Now, this is 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, and 12-inch. And I also wanna make a distinction. These two are gasketed pipes, which you can see in the video. There's a little rubber ring around it, which basically creates a tighter seal. Now, most of the time for drainage applications, we do not use gasketed pipe. It's a little bit unnecessary of a step. We just use regular bell-ended pipe that just slides right in. And that's totally fine for drainage and non-pressurized applications like we'll be talking about today. Now, most of the time, if it's a small application or you're just doing a system on one side of a property or just one specific smaller area, 4-inch is something you can definitely get away with. Now, drop inlets and catch basins are the same thing. We refer to them as drop inlets in the commercial world, but you also might find them as catch basins. And so those are just boxes, whether they're made of plastic or concrete and metal, like we like to build them out of. It doesn't really matter if it's in a smaller application. We always fabricate our own catch basins just because, in my humble but very accurate opinion, they last forever, they're easy to clean out, and you can control the direction of the pipe because you build them yourself. And so you determine where the pipe goes. But we'll get into that in another video. But in terms of 4-inch, a lot of times you can use these for downspouts, going to a catch basin or a junction box to redirect the pipe. And as long as you have some kind of air getting into the system every at least probably 30 or 40 feet, again, depending on how much water flow is coming, then you guys will be okay without having a backup. But if you're going longer than around 30 or 40 feet, you're gonna wanna put some kind of drop inlet in there, even if it's just a 12-inch, a small one, just so air can get into the system and it's not gonna create that kind of glugging effect that you can see if you were to, let's say take a water bottle and dump it out, it can't all get out at the same time. It's like poking a hole in the top of it rather than just dumping it out and then it's trying to catch air the whole time. And so you can have these going to downspouts, catch basins, and as long as proper air is in the system, typically you can get away with around 2 or 3 downspouts per one of these pipes. Now again, if there's a big roof or a big watershed coming off a big driveway or asphalt area, maybe you would want something else, a little bit bigger. But most of the time in a single family residence, you can get away with just doing 2 or 3 downspouts. Again, adjusting for the size roof you've got and what kind of slope you're working with downhill. Now moving up, this is 6-inch. Now this is what you're gonna see in more large applications. And so if you were to install an 18-inch drop inlet, like we do most of the time, in those kinds of applications, this is what you're gonna wanna have going. Or let's say you might be thinking a 4-inch is okay, but the yard's very, very flat, then you might wanna step up the size of pipe just so more water can move through it at a slower pace. If it's really, really steep, then you can get away with 4-inch sometimes, but if it's a little bit flatter, maybe go to 6-inch. And obviously, if it's still going downhill and you have a lot of water, you're gonna wanna stick with a 6-inch. Now, a lot of times we'll run trunk lines through people's properties on the side yard and then use 4-inch to hook all of the downspouts into that system and then get that out to where we need to go. And so 6-inch is pretty versatile. Unless we're doing a larger commercial application where it's just a really big area, we won't step up. So most of the time you can get away with 6-inch. Now, stepping up to 8-inch, most of the time we're not gonna put these in a single family home. It's just not big enough unless you have a lot of sheet flow coming from other properties. And so most of the time you're gonna see this in a little bit more commercial application, whether that's an apartment community or, let's say you've got a huge row of townhomes and you're trying to run a trunk line and then connect a bunch of downspouts into it. Now, I would say, depending on if there's no sheet flow and you're just doing downspouts, again, whether they're 4-inch or 6-inch, depending on the roof size, you can get quite a lot into some of these systems. And again, I keep saying this, it depends on the situation, but most of the time you can get multiple drop inlets, multiple downspouts, and quite a lot of sheet flow into a trunk line with this kind of pipe. Now, stepping up to the biggest size that I've got on the trailer here, that's 12-inch. That is going to be pretty much just for commercial applications. This is something to where if we had tons of townhomes that we're tying in the sheet flow from the lawns, the downspouts, the patios, the driveways, we're gonna run a trunk line down the property with a size pipe like this, and then tie a system of drop inlets with 8-inch, 6-inch, and 4-inch pipes sometimes, all going into the biggest trunk line. Now, what I have seen before is what people try and get away with, and that is running an entire system on just 4-inch pipe, because they don't understand the flow rates of everything and how the air needs to flow through and what you can get away with. And so if that happens, basically the whole thing is just gonna clog, it's getting overwhelmed, and while it might work for some storms, it's not going to work for the heavy stuff. Now, most of the time what we get calls about is big erosion events that happen on big rain events. And so you can definitely design a system with 4-inch pipe or 6-inch pipe, whatever it is, and you can be okay in 50, 60, 70% of rainfalls, but the really big ones that are gonna come are going to completely overwhelm this kind of system. And so what you're gonna wanna do, you wanna decide how well you wanna be protected. Now, sometimes we're installing a system above a pool or in front of somebody's house where it is absolutely mission critical that nothing gets past this system. And so even if we could probably get away with 6-inch, maybe 8-inch, sometimes we'll go ahead and step up to a 12-inch if getting water past the system is absolutely not an option. Now, if you've talked with your spouse or talked with your board of directors or whoever's making the decisions and you decide, well, maybe we don't want to spend the money on a large diameter pipe installation, maybe we're okay if in 1 or 2 rainstorms it gets overwhelmed, but we're protected in 90% of applications. Then you can make the decision to step down to a lower size pipe that will be good for almost every case scenario except the big rainfalls. And so you've just got to balance that in consideration because the price difference is fairly substantial moving up these size pipes. The material is very expensive and the installation process is much more labor intensive. And so I hope this helps you guys. Again, every situation is different, but if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at sca.construction for more information. And as always, thank you for watching.